Hello, lovelies, and welcome to this week's episode of The Happy Psychic. So it's just me again this week. I know that I have had so many episodes recently where I've had a lot of visitors on, but I have so much that I want to say at the minute that I've sort of pushed a lot of those back now. So they will still get released. We are still recording with guests, but I really just wanted to start teaching you really some of the teachings that Spirit bring me. I think with my spiritual connection, I spend a lot of my time speaking to Spirit, and that's, outside of, doing the private readings that I do, the coaching, I genuinely talk to Spirit more than I talk to human people. And I spend a great deal of my time actually learning from them and asking their advice on different topics that are in the news. And what is your advice about this? Where does Spirit stand on that? Where, abortion, all of these different topics that come to the forefront. And I thought that it was a really good opportunity, really, for me to pass some of their teachings on to you guys. Now, there is a few things that I have spotted on like TikTok recently, a couple of things that have cropped up in the news from different, I'm not really, how do I say it? I don't really watch the news. I've never really been interested in the news. It lowers my vibration. And I do find that no matter what news station it is, it's always bias. So there's always a bias there. So I just tend to I don't watch it. However, with all of this information that I have been getting from my spirit guide in connection with the war and Putin's intentions, it has made me a little bit more intrigued to keep an eye to the news. So what I've been doing is I've been watching a couple of different news channels, or keeping abreast certainly to the digital element, to try and get a fuller view really of how different news outlets report on this. And with that, it has brought a few different things into my mind. So if you just keep that in mind, like I'm not like a political person, not interested in politics or anything like that, but there have been some things that I've definitely seen recently that have made me question, I guess, how we conduct ourselves as a human race. And, we're all at different stages of our journey. None of us are the same. And I think that it's really important to recognize that. But I guess, is there a certain element of decorum that we should have whenever we are interacting with our peers and, family members, friends, people that we don't know, things like that? So I thought I would start off. There's three things that I've noted down here in my notes that I wanted to talk about. And the first one, it's in connection actually to the vaccinations. And I had stumbled across something on YouTube, because one of the news channels and the news outlets that I watch is a YouTube only version. So I had stumbled across something on YouTube, and it was Piers Morgan, and it was his view on people who don't vaccinate, or who opted not to take the COVID-19 vaccination. And what it actually showed me was a snippet. Now, I'm well aware, first of all, that it might have been completely taken out of context, but when I read up about it, it didn't seem that it was. But the snippet that I had seen was Piers actually being quite irate, I would say, quite irate, quite opinionated, and quite rude. I do want to say rude, quite rude. That's how it came across to me. That's how I perceived it. And I understand, he was one of many people who held the opinion that you must vaccinate. It's for, it's for the good of us, it's for the good of others. And this clip really showed him voicing that opinion. And as obviously information has transpired of late, that actually the vaccine didn't help us protect other people. It was protecting us. It wasn't helping us from, preventing us from passing, COVID on to other people, or it certainly hadn't been tested to do that. And, there's been quite a few people who had previously supported the vaccine who had then started to backtrack. And whilst I guess, I have no issue in people expressing opinions. I think that there's certainly no harm in that. But I do think that there is a certain way that we should express those opinions. And I don't think that there's ever a reason that we should be rude. What is wrong with being considerate? What is wrong with being kind and courteous of other people's opinions and respecting their views? Just because we hold a certain opinion, and this is where it starts to get interesting, just because we hold a certain opinion does not mean that it is the right opinion and that the only opinion that deserves to be observed. It might be the opinion of the masses, it might be the opinion of the minority, but it doesn't mean that it is the right opinion. It might be our truth at that particular time, but that doesn't even necessarily that it doesn't mean that our truth will remain at that stage. And I would say that, you know, we're constantly evolving as people and we're constantly building up more knowledge. So what we believe that is true today isn't necessarily what's going to be true in a year or 5 years from now. We might be having a very, very different conversation. You know, you might be going from being, you know, a skeptic when it comes to spirituality and mediumship to, you know, a few years down the line being a wholehearted, you know, I believe, you know, I've seen the power of spirit. So you might completely change there. And I think that the exact same goes for this. So whether it's in relation to the vaccination or something else, you know, I think that it is important to voice our opinions respectfully. And I'm not singling Piers out here. He was just one example that I had happened to see. There was others, you know, and people were very, very, you know, vocal about their opinions. But I just think that there is so much that we don't know that we can't possibly say that our opinion is ever the only opinion and the right opinion. It's just not possible. And, you know, I think whenever it comes to science or the universe, you know, the powers of the universe and mediumship, we don't know enough. There's so many unknowns that even whenever we have scientific evidence, there's still question marks that come above that. If you think, for example, if somebody was, you know, in hospital, you know, that had cancer, they were terminally ill, they were in palliative care, they've received chemo, and then all of a sudden they're taken off medication, their family's called in to say their goodbyes, but all of a sudden something happens and they make a miraculous recovery. You know, things like that do happen. You know, Anita Murjani is one example that I would bring to you for that, but things like that do happen and they can't be explained by science. So not everything can be explained. There's too much that we don't know at this stage. And I guess that I would just encourage you, and Spirit would encourage you to keep an open mind and, you know, recognize that actually the truth that you hold today isn't the truth that you might hold tomorrow. It's the truth for you at this moment in time. And I think whenever you're speaking your truth and you're being honest and you're voicing your opinions, do it in a way that actually recognizes that this is my truth, this is my experience, this is what I believe in. However, you are free to have your beliefs. I completely respect your beliefs. You are allowed to have them. You know, we're not saying that we're all right. I'm not saying that my opinions are right. They might not be. Somebody might come and prove me that, you know, mediumship doesn't exist and that actually I'm, you know, should be on medication. I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. I can't imagine that it will. But my truth today is that I have a very, very strong connection with spirit and I bring in messages and I predict the future. So just bear in mind, the truths do change. I haven't always believed that I have an incredible connection to spirit and, you know, bring prophecies in of the future, but that is my truth today. Okay. The next thing that I had sort of come across this week was, well, you know, I wouldn't even say that it's this week. I think it probably has been more prominent in this last few weeks. But my experience, I guess, from being on TikTok, doing some of the content that I do as well in relation to the war. You know, I first posted about this war with Ukraine and Russia in February. And I've sort of had spells where I haven't been asked to publish anything about it. And then Spirit have said, right, okay, we're giving you a little shove. We want you to deliver this information, that information. So it can be quite controversial. I will put my teeth back in. So it can be quite controversial. And there's a couple of reasons really for that. So one of the reasons that I find controversy there is because people don't believe that, you know, mediumship or anything like that exists. And, you know, they assume that everybody who is acting as a psychic medium is fraudulent, acting, you know, out of maybe their own interests to try and generate likes and, you know, follows and things like that. So there is that aspect of it. But I also find that there are some people who might be close-minded to the idea that this sort of information can be predicted. And that can even happen, you know, from other psychic mediums. You know, if you are a psychic medium, you might have a very, very different view, and you might have been given very, very different information. And I suppose that also relates to that, you know, that as being your truth. But I would encourage people to ask questions, you know, whether you're questioning, you know, that a medium is accurate, or that I'm giving the accurate information based on a future prophecy and what's going to happen with the war, or whether we're questioning the government on whether they're giving us the accurate information on COVID vaccines, you know, whether we're questioning the pharmaceutical companies on, you know, the health benefits of taking a specific drug, or the side effects. Whatever it might be, I do encourage questions, and I think that we really need that. You know, we need people to question things more. We don't do enough of it. And I think that we need skeptics. You know, I think whenever we have complete blind faith in whatever information we're given, whether it's coming from me or from a different source, I do think that we need to question it, and just be aware that actually what we're being told might not be the full truth. And it's not always because there's an act of deception happening, but that might be that person's truth. You know, your government might have, you know, wholeheartedly believed that whenever they were telling you that, yes, you know, that you're taking the vaccination to protect other people, they may have believed that. They may have really thought that that was true at that point. So it might not have been an active case of deception, but what I would encourage you is to continue to question things. And I think that it's something that we don't do enough of when it comes to governments and things like that. You know, we have an incredibly, you know, just incredibly large power imbalance when it comes to the Western culture. You know, when you look at, you know, the top heavy aspect of it when it comes to corporations, the rich list, governments, we're often acting in blind faith, you know, that these people have our best interests at heart. And that's not always the case. You know, I know that my guide has shown me quite a lot of information about various different people at the top. Politicians come into it a lot, you know, and she tells me that, you know, a lot of them are self-serving. It's about what they can benefit from the situation rather than how they can benefit the masses. And I'm not saying that everybody is like that, but she is showing me that there's a large proportion of them that are, especially when they get into more senior positions. It's not necessarily that they have ill wishes against people, but from what she shows me, that there is just a significant amount of corruption there, where people can be swayed and people can be bought. People make political decisions. There's too much politics in politics, really. You know, people make decisions based on, you know, how far it's going to get them, or what, you know, favor it'll curry from, you know, other politicians, and, you know, various different things. So it's not always the right decisions that are being made. So I would encourage you to question things, and Spirit really wants you to question things as well. And that's the message that I've been getting a lot recently, where, you know, it's time for us to take back our power as individuals, and that we have really handed too much power off. And one of the things I was shown, I'm not actually sure exactly when I was shown this, but it was earlier this year, and I know that I've done some readings on it. It might be on TikTok, it might be on YouTube, but what I was being shown is the gap between the super rich and the poor is closing in, or it will be closing in. I don't know. She didn't give me a timeline, but she had shown me that that gap was going to close, and the less fortunate people are going to become more fortunate, and those that are super fortunate are going to become less fortunate, but they're really not going to be any worse off. You know, it's just that the spread of wealth is going to be a lot better, and we're all going to be in a better position, really. And I think that you know, it's not going to get there if we don't ask questions and if we don't challenge things. I know that she has shown me protests and things like that happening. She has shown me the government being overturned. Now, I will caveat that with that she hasn't specifically always said that it's the UK government, but she is now. She's saying about the Houses of Parliament. So I know that there is going to be a major shift within British politics. So if you are British, then I'm not saying that you have that to look forward to, but that is definitely something that you can keep an eye on. But I don't necessarily think that that would be a bad thing either. I think that actually it's time for a big shift to come, and I think that it's time for people to be given some answers and to demand some better politicians, really better politics, just better politics in general. So she's not obviously giving me an insight into the US. I know that like quite a large portion of my viewers are in the US as well, but I know that there will be some significant things that will come about over there as well. Now, she is telling me that it's going to take years. This isn't something that's going to happen. You know, if you're thinking, oh, the government's going to be overturned by Christmas, that's not the case. And spirit often experience time, well, they do experience time very different from us. You know, what feels like a month for us could feel like a lifetime for them, because time moves a lot more quickly. But also, you know, we're not always supposed to know whenever things will happen. You know, they'll give us information and say this is going to happen, but they'll not always tell us when, and it could happen 5 years from now. So just bear that in mind. I don't know how quickly this is coming or what is even going to cause this or how it's going to come about, but I do see it coming about. And I've seen that probably for about 12 months or so now. I've been being told that. So I know it's coming. I know change is coming, and there's going to be disruption while we get to that, but it's going to be worth it in the end. It's going to bring about something better. If you're part of my newsletter, you will have seen back in June that I had one of the videos that I had sent out was about a feminine uprising in the Middle East and Iran. Well, I wasn't actually told that it was in Iran. I was just told the Middle East, and I had seen women out on the streets, you know, ripping their hijabs off their heads and protesting. And I knew that it was to do with a feminist movement. And obviously now we have all of this unrest in Iran, and you know, Spirit are really encouraging that forward. Although they, you know, they disagree with the violence, they recognize that sometimes that is the only way to get heard and to instigate change. So they're really standing behind the women in Iran at the minute, and it's very much their belief. I realize that I've segued off in a little bit, but it is very much Spirit's belief that men and women should be treated equal. Man was not created greater than woman. That is not the intention. She's saying equal measures, equal measures. So men and women are supposed to be equals in this life. You know, we shouldn't be in a position, and it's very, very interesting. Actually, I'll go on to this in a second, but we shouldn't be in a position where it's men that are in power, the masculine force. So all of this at the moment is about, you know, the feminine coming into power, and it's not about the women coming into power over the men. It's about that equality coming in. So really the universe is pushing for those equal measures to come in. Okay. It's funny because whenever I am working with my guide, I have my guide first and foremost that I work with, and she is my first port of call whenever I'm connecting into spirit. But she might say to me, I have an introduction to another person. I want you to speak to this person. We have somebody else that's come through that wants to speak to you. And sometimes I speak to the same people repeatedly. Sometimes it's different people that I'm speaking to, but they're all imparting knowledge onto me in some way. And I did notice that it's all men. Like for the most part, it's men that she's introducing me to. And there's a man coming in a dark suit with a briefcase. And I actually did say, so why is it so many men? Why is there so many men that I'm connecting with? Where are the women? Where's the powerful, intelligent women in spirit? And she has said that actually the spirit world is a reflection of the earth world. So because we have this thing where, the masculine energy is very, very top heavy when it comes to power and decision making and the corporations and, governments and things like that. She has said that it's reflected then obviously in the spirit world. So the people that do come forward to me often have had a life on earth, and they want to impart some wisdom based on their own experiences. And and that was very interesting to understand that. So whenever we start to really change things on the earth plane and we see more equality coming into play between the feminine and the masculine energies, then that will really start to be reflected in spirit with anybody that does come through to me, or anyone else really, with knowledge and things like that. So another thing just on that topic, whenever I'm encouraging questions, I really think that it's important to mention that I don't believe, and spirit are certainly backing me on this, that people shouldn't be persecuted for being curious. No matter what your views are and how they might oppose those, I think that, there is a way that we should deal with that. And just because you have a certain view doesn't mean that it's the right one, but that doesn't mean that somebody else should be persecuted for having theirs. I think that we need to have an open mind to know that actually there is a lot more that we don't know. And whenever I think of things like that, if you had said to me 5 years ago about aliens and everything else, extraterrestrials and spaceships and whatever, I would have been about, I'm not really, it wasn't really on my agenda. It wasn't really one of the beliefs that I held. But I think from my experiences have developed spiritually, I have come to realize that actually I'm not in a position to say that aliens don't exist or extraterrestrials don't exist, because I have come to realize that actually anything is possible. Anything is possible. And that's where I really just say that, the truth that we're speaking from today isn't the truth that we're going to be speaking from tomorrow. And we need to be considerate and open-minded of others that are on a different path. As long as they're speaking their truth and it's not an act of deception, then we need to support that and honor that, really, and let them have their truth. And they might not be ready to hear your truth, and they might not never be ready, or maybe you'll be converting to their truth at some point. But we're learning so much as we go through life, and it is a learning experience. There's an incredible amount of us, of things for us to learn, and that's one of the main purposes for us to be here, is to learn and learn lessons and things like that. So just try to be considerate whenever somebody does have an oppositional view or isn't in agreement, and hopefully whenever you interact with them in a way that is, supportive and courteous, perhaps then they'll do the same with you. So that's the one thing that I would say. The third thing that I actually seen this week, and it really interested me, because I had spoken to Spirit about it a little bit before. And it is the topic of transgender. Okay. And what I had actually seen was, it was something on TikTok, and Jamie Lee Curtis, the actress, has a trans daughter. And she was saying about the threats on her daughter's life, the threats that her daughter receives just because she's transgender, and because, people want her to live in a special way or a specific way, and she's not adhering to that. And it really, it just really got me thinking, what can ever justify us wanting to take another human's life? We look at war, and, this situation with Ukraine and Russia, it hurts my heart, because I just can't comprehend what it would be like to be on a battlefield and shooting at somebody and being like, yes, we got him. I just, that doesn't comprehend. Like, it's just beyond my comprehension. I don't understand what sort of world we live in where that is acceptable. Life is precious, and what is it to me to how somebody else lives their life? Yeah, I don't get why we're all so intent on pushing our views and our truths onto other people. Live and let live, let people live their own life. And it did really get me thinking about this whole thing with transgender, transsexual, trans, and I actually asked my guide where they stand on it. And whenever I refer to my guide, like, my guide is a messenger from God. Whenever I'm talking to my guide, it's as good as talking to God himself. The information that she brings me through is in line with source, so I'm always connected to source. So it's a very, very loving energy. But what she has said is that God doesn't differentiate between murderers or anything like that. Like, we're all loved. So it doesn't matter if you have killed somebody, you have persecuted somebody for being trans, or you're trans yourself. It doesn't matter. You'll always get the same love from God. And she's also telling me as well that God never makes mistakes whenever he creates a person. And if that person is adamant that they don't belong in that gender, then that's maybe a challenge that they have opted to experience in this world in order to learn how to overcome obstacles, and also teach others about acceptance and tolerance as well. So whenever somebody is saying, like, I am a male, but I really identify as a female, why do we have to argue about that? What does it matter? It doesn't make any difference to me. If you want to call yourself a butterfly, it doesn't matter. Just let people be who they want to be. Now, the one caveat that the Spirit did actually come through about that was operations. They are in disagreement about operations when it comes to gender reassignment surgery. And that the reason that they've actually given me around that is that the body is precious, the whole body is a temple thing, but what you have been assigned with, you shouldn't really mess with. This should be, what you should keep to take care of it. So if you were born with a penis, then you should continue to live your life with a penis. I say should. They would encourage you to live. It's not a dictatorship. They're not running a dictatorship up there where they're saying you cannot have this gender reassignment surgery. That's not how they operate, but they would encourage people to embrace themselves as they are. And that's, including any perceived imperfections that you feel you might have. And if you're finding it hard to look at yourself in a mirror because, you really view yourself as a female, but your body traits are masculine, she would encourage you really to look at other ways, alternative ways, in order to deal with that, and coping mechanisms, and different therapeutics and things like that can help you deal with that, rather than changing. So it's really a lesson in acceptance, almost, whenever we come into this incarnation, having chosen that path for ourselves. And it's very interesting, actually, because I've done this twice so far. I connected with a baby who hadn't been born yet. So it was a baby who was still in the womb. And this has happened on 2 different occasions. And the baby that I had connected in with had actually, well, I'm just being told about the baby having darker skin for a start. Why is that important? That must be important for a reason, but I'll just make a mental note of that. But I'm being told mixed race. So I know that there's some amalgamation of ethnicities with this baby. But what she is actually reminding me of whenever I'm talking to my guide now about it, she said about this person wanted to experience life as being courageous and standing up for what they believed in, and standing up for what was right, and helping other people overcoming their differences. So this soul had chosen a set path to come here, and they have chosen to struggle with their gender identity and their sexuality, really, on the whole. So he's coming into the world in a masculine body. And he has been born now, so it's a boy, it's a baby boy, but on a soul level, he really wanted to come in as a man, as a boy, and but he wanted to experience, backlash and things like that. People, referring to him as like being perverted and things like that, because when it comes to gender, he is masculine. He's attracted to other males, so on that basis, he is gay, but he's also struggling with, having the masculine body. He wants to be more of a feminine figure. And she had actually told me then that God doesn't make mistakes. This is supposed to occur because it helps us with learning different lessons, and it helps us with tolerance. But I don't know, perhaps I'm being narrow-minded with this. I'm very, very open to suggestion, but I do wonder why we feel the need to really impress our views on other people, and what does it achieve? It's like me creating this content. You're happy to come and watch it, but you're also, I'm happy for you to scroll past it. It doesn't matter. I know that my messages will will reach the right people and the people who need to hear them. But I'm not forcing my opinions on you. I'm simply telling you what my truth is. I'm telling you what, Spirit have said to me, the messages that they communicate to me. And I'm not a religious person. And my guide is saying now that, she's not religious. She's not a religious person. However, she is a woman of God. She's a person of God. And I would clarify myself as that. I would classify myself as that as well. I'm not religious. I don't conform to a specific religion or specific church religion, but I do classify myself as being a person of God. A godly person. I suppose I'm bringing messages through from God in a sense as well. But I do question the need for us to be right. And I think that one of the things that puts me off religions is whenever I look at some of them are so judgmental. And God doesn't judge. Spirit don't judge. They love all of us, every single one of us. Doesn't matter what color our skin is, what we do to ourselves in a night whenever we're under the covers. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. They love us all regardless. So we're all treated equally. Whenever it comes to abortion as well, that was another thing that I was really interested in. And she doesn't really want to discuss this in too much detail, but the same thing is there. If a woman decides to abort a baby, or has decided to abort a baby, Spirit are still supportive of her. It's not like, she's banished to the depths of hell or anything like that. But I just really wanted to reiterate that and certainly from my truth and the experience that I'm given, that we're all embraced and we're all loved and cared for, really. So I know that I did go a little bit off kilter for that, but I really hope that it's helped you a little bit, and I hope that you've enjoyed listening to it. And if you have any comments, feel free to comment under the video, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, feel free to drop me an email. It's gemma@guidinglight.guru, or the website is gemmalonsdale.guru. But don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the content. Definitely subscribe. If you have any interest in having some specific content, specific topics, specific interviews, anything like that, just drop me an email, or even on Instagram as well. I try to keep on top of my Instagram messages too. So thank you very much, and I will look forward to the next episode.